Good morning and good afternoon to all, and thank you for joining us today. Today, we will be discussing really the topic of should I stay or should I go, a conversation about the big shift. I'm Amiksha Patel, Senior Director of Brand Strategy here at Fairy Godboss. For those of you who are not familiar with Fairy Godboss, we're an employer branding and recruitment marketing solution that really helps companies attract, engage, and hire professional and technical women. Through our platform, we offer a variety of free resources like our anonymous company reviews, our job board, articles and career advice, virtual events, and more to really help companies enhance their employer brand, develop diversity-focused recruitment strategies, and really build that diverse candidate pipelines. So before we get started today, I just want to mention a few things. I want to let everyone here know that we will be taking questions at the end of this webinar. You will see a Q&A feature at the bottom of your bar, so you can ask questions as yourself or anonymously, and also that this webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to all of you as a follow-up, so you can feel free to rewatch anything you may have missed. So first of all, I'd love to start off by really thanking our sponsor of today's conversation, Eaton. Eaton is a power management company made up of approximately 85,000 employees doing business in more than 175 countries. Their energy efficient products and services help companies and customers effectively manage electrical, hydraulic, and mechanical power more reliably, efficiently, safely, and sustainably. By giving people tools to use power more efficiently, helping companies do business more sustainably, and by encouraging each and every employee at Eaton to think differently about their business, their communities, and the positive impact they can have on the world. So thank you all again for being here today, and I'd love to really get started by introducing our phenomenal panelists from Eaton today. We have Jackie Morgan, VP Global Talent Acquisition. We have Cindy Fisher, VP Global Learning and Culture. We have Becky Jacoby, Director, Talent Management and Organizational Effectiveness. And we have Kerry Tingley, VP General Manager. So I will let each of you give a brief intro of what your role here is at Eaton, and we can start with you, Jackie.
All right, great. Thank you, Amiksha. So as Amiksha mentioned, Jackie Morgan, I lead talent acquisition for Eaton across the globe for the enterprise. I've been with Eaton now 6 years. Prior to joining Eaton, I spent time as a talent acquisition leader for a global Fortune 50 financial institution. And then prior to that, spent about 10 years in the executive search business. I have a son who's 9 years old, a husband, and I live in Northeast Ohio. And I'm thrilled about being part of the panel today. Looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Cindy?
Great. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Cindy Fisher, and I lead learning and culture for Eaton. And super excited to come to you today from Cleveland, my hometown. I actually grew up here, although I moved a lot early in my career. And in my role, basically, we're building learning and culture strategies for the organization based upon all the great things that were described earlier. And in my personal life, I've got 2 stepsons. They are in their 20s now, which is insane to me. And I also have a husband as well that I'm balancing, in addition to, I'm sure, also many of you, a couple of parents who also need quite a bit of my help along the way.
Great. Thanks. Becky?
Well, thank you. I'm Becky Jacoby. I have talent management and organizational effectiveness for the electrical sector at Eaton. And many don't know what that is. That's a specialty area. So I'm a consumer of the stuff that Cindy's team makes, and I work with Jackie as well as Kerry, but we connect and support activities that align, attract, develop, and engage our talent at Eaton. I've been with Eaton for 26 years. I'm the proud mom of 2 teenage boys who are both in high school and college freshmen this fall. And my husband is a teacher, and we've been together for 28 years.
Wow. And finally, Kerry.
Thank you. So I'm Kerry Tingley, the Vice President and General Manager of Eaton's Industrial Control Division. So we sell products into machinery OEMs, industrial process control customers, The division's a little over 1,000 people, and I would say I am Milwaukee based, and I have 3 sons, one who is now a freshman in college and then 2 still in high school. So whatever you're thinking about today regarding your career, I'm sure I've been there at some point in my 25-year career with Eaton, and happy to be part of this conversation.
Wow. Well, thank you for the wonderful introductions, and we can get started with the first question. So, obviously, we're here today to talk about the big shift. So, can you tell us what the big shift is and why is it happening? And Jackie, we can start with you.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks. It's a great question. So, when I think about the big shift, I think about it in less in terms of the physical shifting of, kind of people moving jobs, which certainly is going on around us. But when we sit back and we really think about it, the big shift it's a mindset shift, and it's happening everywhere. And I think it's caught a lot of us off guard. I think regardless of our age, our position, right? COVID has reminded us that life can be short, and our jobs and flexible options have also showed us how work can work kind of around our lives. So, I think there's been almost like a force to adapt our kind of personal and our professional priorities. And I think what we're seeing is a reprioritization of what's important to all of us. And that's kind of the shift, right? That's what I think about when I think about the big shift. The careers that we have are important to us. I think they're even more important to us now than they were before. But I also think that we've seen that it's possible to do things maybe a little bit differently, and it's causing us to think differently about what we do and when we do it and how we do it and who we do it for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Jackie, just to kind of pile into that. I think it's funny, the things that people are reprioritizing, they're not new things. I mean, we've been talking about how do we have a more flexible workplace for 10 years. I think, in the last 18 months, what happened was that we were forced to do it and really see the outcomes of that. And, balancing that though, I also think over the last 18 months, people have never been, they've never been more burnt out. So whether it's, myself as an employee or as an employer, I think we're all thinking about how do we make that better for people? How do we get more balance? And I think that's top of mind for women. I know it's top of mind for my husband just as much as it is for me. I think we're all kind of feeling that. And then other trends that I've kind of seen too is just this purposeful work. It's like, if I'm going to give so much of myself, I don't want to just do a job. I want to have meaning. And we used to talk about that quite a bit, but now it's really coming to a head, and people are leaving because of it. If I don't feel like my work is valued, if I don't feel like I am valuable, I have other opportunities because there are also more opportunities out there. So it's interesting. The trends are not new, but it's really come to a forefront in the past 18 months or so, and it's kind of exciting to see where it's going, and the employees, ourselves included, that are kind of leading some of the discussions.
I agree with the factors that Jackie and Cindy just shared, and then when you combine them with the current economy and job market, and the availability of more location agnostic positions to choose from is really creating that shift. And these factors could prompt us to start second guessing our commitment, particularly where we don't feel valued or like we belong. Flexible work, like Cindy said, we've been talking about it for a long time, but it's creating career options. Companies are trying to broaden their talent pool and attract new talent. And you're also trying to retain the talent that you already have. And I look at this and say, organizations and leaders, we have to be very aware of how we handle the return to office plans and then our transition to the hybrid work environment, all very important. But then coming back to this belonging and purposeful work is really, really critical for all of us on this call and the people who work for us.
Right, Becky, especially when you think about, there was a recent poll that showed 40% of the workforce is currently considering a job change. And that's a pretty significant fact when you think about it, and that statistic. Some of you on this call may be thinking about a change as well, whether it's internal or external. So hopefully we can provide some insight for you as you contemplate those career options.
Wow. Well, great. Love it. And, we do hear from our community that it can be difficult to ask for more flexibility, more opportunities, or a higher salary from an employer. So what advice do you have for women, who want to ask for what they need and they deserve in their current jobs? So, Becky, want to start?
Yeah, so in terms of flexibility, we were talking about Eaton has been offering a flexible work policy for many years, but we recently updated and relaunched because we recognize there's, changing needs of our workforce. And we were already in the process of doing that before the pandemic, but it really accelerated our focus. But each situation is different. So it's always good to start with understanding the current offerings that your organization has and outline what works best for you. I think back for myself and many, those of you that know me, my first son was born 10 weeks premature, spent time in NICU, various medical complications. He has cerebral palsy, but in the beginning, I needed flexibility. I was on a job that traveled 75%. I negotiated a special role within my team, and it significantly reduced my travel for about 2 years, which is exactly what I needed when we call the dark years. But then throughout my past 18 years as a manager, I've tried to seek roles that gave me the opportunity to kind of flex with what I'm trying to do for my family, what I'm trying to do in balancing my career. And then I also tried to do the same for my team. I've negotiated with my staff, to work 3/5 schedule, 4/5 schedules, job sharing, working remotely, working from home. One person on my team, her mother had cancer, needed to be in Augusta, Georgia for 4 months. And we were able to work out that type of schedule for her to be able to do that. And I think that's part of it, is recognizing that we all have different needs and at different times, and to recognize the situation. But at the end of the day, we have to communicate expectations both ways. Here's what I have expected of you in that role, and this is what you'll expect of me as a leader, and ensure that we're meeting those commitments and keep revisiting it. It wasn't like, hey, I need this flexible schedule for 2 years because I can't travel. It was keep revisiting on what I needed, and then what the team needed for me, to make sure that we were making sure that we were both getting something out of this relationship in terms of how the work was happening.
I'd like to jump in and piggyback off what Becky's talking about, because I think the key here is to ask for what you need, no matter how bold the request. At a very minimum, it can serve as a starting point to open a conversation and negotiate an end result that works well for both sides, what the individual needs, what you need, and then what your organization needs from you. And I'm sure we can all tell our stories on how we've navigated through this. I can remember the first time that I was really struggling with orchestrating a career and being a mom of young kids, and how much stress it caused for me. And in this situation, I worked for a leader who was a working leader, liked to dive into details and do a lot of team sessions. And he would think nothing about walking by at 4:30 or 5 o'clock saying, everybody, we're going to have a pizza dinner tonight, and we're going to get in the conference room and we're going to hash this out, which is a great philosophy, except that I had a deadline to pick up my kids at daycare by a certain time, where you start getting charged by the minute. And with a working spouse, we would sit down every Sunday night and map out who is doing pickup on what days. So I just remember being in the bathroom crying to my husband, can you please get the kids? I know it's the second time this month. We need to have another working session tonight. I finally got the courage to tell my boss what was happening and say, this isn't working for me for this reason. What other solutions can we come up with? And he didn't hesitate. His immediate response was, well, you can skip these sessions. You can call in from home if you really want to. But he later told me he had never managed a woman in that position before and hadn't really thought about the possibility. And he said, I'm shocked and almost a little bit disappointed you didn't come to me sooner with this, and that you struggled with it for so long. So, let's face it, not every leader, whether male or female, will be able to think about these ramifications that their actions have on your personal work-life integration. My guidance is be bold and tell them if something isn't working for you, because 99% of leaders are going to want to help you fix that and make your life easier.
Oh, I think you're totally right, Kerry. And I'm seeing some of the commentary coming into the chat of, how hard it is to have those type of conversations. I think it is hard. And I think your comment around 90% of leaders want to do the right thing, it totally resonates with me. I think.
And I just made that up, Cindy. So that one is not like my earlier one.
Don't use that exact stat. We'll make sure if you say it as fact, it is fact. But I do think the majority are. And I think of the men that I've worked for, of the women that I've worked for, some women are not great at encouraging that flexibility or helping someone to navigate a career. We are, like many companies, one of the things we hear is, my career is only as great as my manager makes it. And so there's a lot of just, texture out there. And I think your point around asking, I think we're going to hear that theme, I think, throughout the morning, is just, you have to have the conversation. And I know it can be difficult. I know it can be scary, but I would say in my experience, 80% of the time, it is better as a result of the discussion. And, on the career path side of things, as far as opportunities, and the first thing, my advice is, before you ask for what opportunities are out there, you have to have some sense of what you want. One of the things I see, and it's not just women who do this, I think a lot of people just meander from opportunity to opportunity and oftentimes wait to be tapped for those opportunities. And I would really push everybody that's listening today, just really be reflective on what matters to you, what's important to you, what do you want? And I think sometimes in careers, we forget about the holistic picture. And I think as women, we don't have that luxury as much in some cases, because it is so much to manage in a life when you're managing all the things that everybody's described today, as far as what's in life, what's in work, what's in career. We've got a lot of great career tools at Eaton. One of my favorite ones is it's a values tool. We used to have this like old values spreadsheet, and basically we have this new fancy way to do it, but it's a similar concept. It's basically holistically, what do I want in life? Becky's comment, like, how much do I want to travel? Asking yourself what you want in your life and in your career, and melding that conversation together and being really clear and really purposeful with it helps then your leaders around you to kind of navigate what that conclusion is for you. And then help solidify, at least in my life, this is what I want to do. How do I navigate to that? What do I need to do? About 10 years into my career, I wanted to move out of traditional HR into that specialty place that Becky had talked about earlier. And there was one job. There was one person who did that job in my entire business unit. And I had no idea how to, I wanted that job, and I had no idea what to do. And someone told me exactly that. Well, why don't you just call the person? And it was like, oh, okay, I'll try that. So I did. I called her and I said, I want to be you. I have no idea what I should do. And she gave me some amazing advice. And it was still another 4 years later before an opportunity opened up, and I had to compete hard for it. It was like 10 other people that were already in the space. I had never done it, but she had given me the advice to build that into what I was doing. She had built my network in the years since we had first talked. And I ended up getting that opportunity and being able to make that career shift. And I'll never forget her for that, and the guidance she gave, but also the realization of like, oh, I should just reach out and navigate that. And most companies today have infrastructure in place. So if you're if you're in a company today and you're not sure what the opportunities are, figure out what your infrastructure is. There is usually something in play. Like, we've got mentoring, we've got stretch assignment marketplaces where, if I want to build a skill, I can assign myself to a project. A lot of companies are doing some very cool, innovative things to connect around the learning and development of people. So figure out what that infrastructure is, leverage it, but then don't forget to reach out and build the network. We had an HR intern who reached out and put like just 15 minutes on a bunch of HR VPs' calendars. And she just wanted to hear our story. How did you navigate your career? What decisions did you make? Why did you make them? Quick chat. And it blew me away, because I was like, oh my gosh, 21 years in this company and no one has ever done that. And it was so little and it was so simple. She walked away with so much insight. So I think your point, Kerry, around ask, you got to reach out, you got to navigate that, you got to be brave. You might not like all the answers along the way, but I would say most conversations are going to lead you to the next thing.
It's funny how you shared that, Cindy, because Cindy was one of the people I contacted because I was in sales operations and product management and more marketing and sales roles. And I wanted to make this move, this shift into organizational development. And Cindy had that job in the Americas region. And I remember talking to her about it, saying, I know I don't have HR background, I don't have this experience, but I want to do this, what do I have to do? She got me involved in the mentoring program. I worked on some special projects and assignments, and then sort of networking. Again, that asking piece. And that was really helpful for me to make that shift. And it is, especially when you're making those functional jumps, it's a little scary. I was also thinking about Amiksha's question about salary. There's another question about asking. Like, in terms of salary, asking for a higher salary can be very hard. And it's not just women, a bit in general, that's sometimes hard for us to do. I've asked for more money several times. I've been successful twice. But you'll never get what you want if you don't ask. And at Eaton, I feel comfortable because I know that we have pay equity assessments and we have processes in place to evaluate and reevaluate compensation. We look at performance work, market assessments, and so on. But even so, I was given advice from someone because I wasn't sure how to ask, but I just felt like I was worth more in terms of that. And the advice I got was like, prepare for that conversation by knowing what you're worth and looking at similar roles. And it's not titles, because you have to look at responsibilities, because titles are free, but the responsibilities that you have, looking at those and relevant and comparing those roles. And then build this conversation around the value you bring versus just stating you want more money. And we were talking about this before. I've had it happen to me and others on the call. I want, I want more money. But why? Like, what is the value you're bringing that makes you feel like you deserve more than you're currently making? So think about that in terms of your value. And then don't be afraid to make the change. If you feel like you're not being compensated fairly, I'll go back to my neuroscience in terms of your sense of fairness. Fairness is a social need for all humans. If your sense of fairness is triggered, it can fester and undermine your job satisfaction, which leads to all these other things in terms of your sense of belonging and that feeling. So don't be afraid to make that change if you're feeling you're not getting what you deserve.
Wow. Great advice from all of you. I love it, and I'm definitely gonna, take some of that myself. So now assume that, you've tried everything we just discussed and you still can't get what you need and you want to start looking for another job. What's the best way to get noticed by potential employers? Jackie, you want to start with that one?
Sure, absolutely. So, first I'll just, maybe start with some reminders around just social media, right? The things you want to make sure, right, are kind of cleaned up in your own social media that get you noticed, right, for the wrong things. No matter where you are in your career, I suggest, everybody does a quick Google search on their name, right? Make sure that, your online persona, right, is what you want it to be. But then I think regardless of industry or function or market cycle, some of the things that organizations look for, no matter how big and small they are, is folks that can demonstrate agility and resiliency, right? We know that right now, and I think, the name of the game in the coming years is going to be just change and evolution, and things are moving faster than they ever have before. If you can show and demonstrate that you are agile, right, that you can, take change, right, on the chin, you can shift directions, right, your car doesn't stay in park, you can quickly pivot. Those things are going to be valuable to organizations. So, as you're thinking about, potentially making a shift, and as you're kind of taking an inventory, if you will, of your career and the roles that you've been in, and really thinking about who you are as an individual and as a leader, thinking in terms of the situations and the examples in your career that can help an employer see, how you keep the end goal in mind, right? But that you're able to shift and be agile, right, as changes come in. No matter, again, what kind of organization, what leader, right, what kind of position, what function, that is highly valuable, right, to all leaders. The other thing I'll mention is, attitude, right? I think attitude is a big part of this as well. When you're talking about your career and what you want, and I think Becky and Cindy, and Kerry were talking about this. You want to know what you want, and you want to have the confidence when you go to market to seek and seek out what you want, and be very transparent about what's important to you. So, I think those things, the agility, the resiliency, knowing what you want, right, being very purposeful about asking for it, those are things that employers appreciate, and they kind of know, they know who you are, and they know, what's important to you.
Great. I'm loving it all, soaking it all in. So, it was mentioned previously that people are prioritizing purposeful work and a good company culture along with flexibility. So, how can you tell before you accept a position if a company offers purposeful work and a good company culture with that? Cindy?
I knew you were going to toss that to me with my culture title, Amiksha. So I think it's a great question. I think, so the thing about culture, and especially a strong culture, is you should see it everywhere. So, culture ultimately comes down to, what's the org value? How do people behave? And then I like to also, there's an Aon model that I love that also talks about like how decisions are made. And it's kind of how all of those things happen on the daily that leads to culture. And so it's like this theme around ask. So you should ask about how that daily operation looks and acts and feels from the people that you're interacting with along the way. And it should be really obvious. And you should get tons of consistency around the answers that you're seeing. I hate to say it, but sometimes in an interview process, it is a bit of the feel. So that should feel consistent. It should feel like it matches. And so flexibility matters to you. If it's something that the organization says is important to them, you should be able to get and garner lots of examples from people that you're dialoguing with around how that's happening on the daily. And not just the one, hypothetical scenario of how we would do it, but like, these are the 3 people that we're working through this with today. And so that texture should come out of the dialogues. At Eaton, we talk a lot today around sustainability, and we have a vision really, and it's quite aspirational, to improve the quality of life, and the environment through our products. And that's one thing to say, right? It's a lot to say that, but we also, we have a partnership with the UN Global Compact. We've set 2030 sustainability goals. We have actual physical goals around reducing our carbon emissions by 50%. Our manufacturing sites, going from 100% of them to be zero waste to landfill. So you would hope that if somebody espouses something, that you would see evidence of that. And hopefully people are also letting you talk to people. So, I think that's one of the things I see so much in the work that Jackie does, is we really try to, at Eaton, when we're bringing somebody in and we're talking about our culture, you're allowed to talk to multiple people. It's not like the secret, sauce is only with the one individual. You should be able to dialogue with multiple people, get that perspective, have a sense for how that's playing out on a daily basis. Hopefully, the company does some sort of listening approach. So most strong cultures ask their employees, there's that theme again, but they ask how things are going. So, at Eaton, we do a census survey, pulse surveys. We want to know, is the culture we espouse actually coming to fruit? And sometimes, we've got challenges in our own culture where we work through those. We're constantly evolving. I think most companies are. But you should be able to get lots of examples of that when you ask around and you get a feeling and a sense of a vibe, to really have a sense of whether that fits with what you're wanting.
I would just jump in real quick, Cindy, and I like how you talked about talking to multiple people. As a hiring manager, I do try to set up a lunch or a more casual setting where a candidate can come in and talk to someone who would be their peer and is not necessarily a decision maker in that hiring process. And I do tell them both that's the situation, and then don't ask any questions about how that conversation went. And that's the candidate's chance to truly assess that culture. And I think your point that you are, as a candidate, are interviewing the company as much as they are interviewing you, and you're interviewing for that cultural fit, is a key thing to remember if you are going to think about looking for a job outside wherever you may be today.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry, and thanks, Cindy. And knowing that unfortunately there were 2.2 million fewer women in the labor force in October 2020 than there were in the previous year, October 2019. Do you have any advice for women who left the workforce during the pandemic, who are hoping to re-enter and land their next job? Kerry, maybe we'll start back with you then.
Sure. The first thing I would say is come back to the workforce. We need you. And I know I threw out a real statistic before and then a guess, but this one is real. Women are 51% of the US population, and we need all of you represented in the workforce in order to make progress for all women. So my advice would be, This is clearly a time to have confidence in yourself and your abilities. And many women are in the position you may be in, voluntarily having left the workforce to care for children, parents, or in response to any other change in your life, whether it's due to COVID or not. Many women are looking to get back, and companies want to hire these women, as I think they really do realize the benefits of inclusion and diversity in their staff. There was a survey conducted by the Pew Research Center, and I'll put a link into the chat when I get a breather, but it lists several specific areas where women are stronger in business than men. So just a couple quick examples I noted were women are 34% better at working out compromises, 34% more likely to be honest and ethical, 25% better at mentoring. And there's a lot more in the article that you should read. But what I would say to women coming back is really two things. Think about what you've done in your time away, because you were using skills that can translate back into the workplace. And don't be shy about talking about how your skills used at home or volunteering or whatever it is you may have been doing translate back to the workplace. And also remember that confidence. Companies are competing for your talent. And I feel as a woman, you're in the driver's seat right now. So remember that and use it.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you, Kerry, and then share, like when I would think about that, at Eaton, we have lots of programs that support our female employees. Some of them, like the employee resource groups, such as we have WAVE, which is for women adding value at Eaton, and that's about supporting women and their male allies. And then I'm a member of Enable, which is really about parents with children with this, like not just children, but for people with disabilities. And as a mom of a child with a disability, that group has been helpful for me. We have female development programs, we have regional programs, we do Spark Squads, we do She Suite. And then in our businesses, like in Electrical Americas, we were doing women's town halls, and we're still doing them. We're trying to connect our professional females and our female leaders. And then we also have our mentoring program, which is self-nominated. And that has been a great change for us, because in the past you had to be nominated, but now we allow our employees to nominate themselves. I want mentoring, I can put myself into the program. And then we've seen many of our female colleagues promoted to executive roles, like Jackie and Cindy on this call today. So we need you back in the workforce, but when you return, we also have programs to support you.
I think just to add into that, Becky, it just makes me think, because, I think sometimes we see women that are successful and we assume it was all easy. And, I know we're sharing a few stories, but even just this week, like I've got, two of my parents, I was dealing with my dad's health issue. I've got a big appointment on Wednesday for him. My mom emergency went into the hospital Monday morning. And so it's one of those, and I actually thought to myself, if I had kids at home right now during COVID, like the whole thing would have fallen apart. And I was having that conversation with my husband last night. So, I think supporting each other through those ERGs and through sharing the stories with each other of when it was hard and how we got through it and who supported us, who helped us. Thankfully this week, I had a profit planning meeting on Monday, and our CHRO, he immediately was like, hey, if you want to cancel the call, that's fine, right? And without giving him the context of what was happening in my life, that would have never been an option. I didn't need the option, but I appreciated the option. So I think as we talk about who's successful and how great they ended up being and all those things, women who are successful in their careers have lots of war stories along the way. And I think the more we share those and how we've all kind of ferreted our way through them, the easier it becomes to make that part of the daily conversation of where we need support.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with Kerry and Becky and Cindy more. I mean, I think the moral of the story, right, when I think about it, it really comes down to choosing your culture wisely. And I had a leader say that, a female leader say that to me very early on in my career. She got up on a stage and she was talking to a whole bunch of female leaders. This was in financial services, and she said just that: choose your culture wisely. And all the questions and the prompting, right, that Cindy and Kerry and Becky have been talking about, know what's, again, important to you. And when you're thinking about where you want to go and where you want to reset your career, obviously the benefits and the perks and work from home and compensation, all those things, right, they're a part of it. But being in talent acquisition for now a couple of decades, I will say that the most successful matches I've seen made over my career have been not about the compensation and the benefits. Those things have just kind of come, but it's more of that culture piece. So I think Cindy mentioned it, understanding how decisions are made, right? What's a company's mission? How do they connect with making the world kind of a better place? You know, how do they encourage development? How do they help their people, right, balance the personal and the professional, right? Really understanding how an organization operates their human capital, how they invest in their people. Because those are the things, right, that when the work gets really tough, and it will, you know, and life is going to come in, and you know, it's going to throw a curveball at you. You know, those culture things, those are the sticky things. Those are the things that keep you engaged, keep you motivated, and not only motivated at work, but motivated at home, right, to balance it, because it is a balance.
Jackie, I think those are some really good points in talking about the culture, and that should be one of the key characteristics that you're looking for in the company. And embedded, at least in my mind, embedded in that is how the company thinks about key decision making you talked about, but really about career paths too. You know, I think the most impactful aspect is within Eaton, we have a philosophy that employees drive their careers. So you decide when you are ready for that next challenge, what that next challenge should be. And then, of course, we provide the tools, whether it's mentoring or coaching from your current leaders or other leaders in the organization. But there really are no strictly defined career paths. And, you know, if you took a sampling of my peers, so all of the VP GMs within the organization, I'd say we all got here through different routes, and probably no two of us took exactly the same path, whether it was through commercial function and different roles there, operational, a mix, growing up in one division or jumping into different parts of Eaton to learn different processes and products. And I think that's really important because, as you know, some women have found that working through the pandemic maybe wasn't the best option for them and are looking to come back. They've got to come back at the right point in the organization. And I think one of the ways that companies can help retain these women is sometimes you want to slow down your career because you have young kids and you're comfortable being in a role that you're comfortable in. And then something changes and you want that challenge and you want that role that scares the heck out of you. So I'd certainly encourage you, if you are going through that interview stage, talk about culture and certainly talk about career paths and career progression and how those decisions are made specifically.
Wow, that's great. And I love hearing all of that. And just to kind of continue in a little bit more about culture and benefits and within Eaton too. So Kerry, you know, I know we've kind of covered some of this, but what has Eaton, how has Eaton provided the stability and support for women at the company during this time?
Sure. I mean, I would say over the course of the 25 years, I've been a benefactor of what Becky was talking about with compensation assessments. I've been a benefactor of some of the benefits, tuition reimbursement, and other examples along those lines. And again, to Jackie's point, some of that is almost table stakes at a lot of companies. I think as I think of the past, let's say, year and a half, I can think of so many examples where Eaton leaders, and hopefully including me, if anybody on my team was listening and had a chance to answer this question, could say that we've demonstrated that we care about the person first and the person as an employee second. So by that, I mean, not that we don't care about results, we're still a results-oriented company, but we found creative ways to stay connected to our remote teams, to really step up promoting personal well-being, both physical and mental, giving all employees that avenue to focus on themselves. And I think that level of support that from and I'll say from a pure job standpoint, it's been difficult for everyone through COVID. I don't want to get into material shortages and industry concerns that everybody has right now. My job has been no different than others along those lines. But I will say, quite honestly, it's the first time in my career where I've seen things happen to employees who maybe got sick or were put into situations that I couldn't help them with. And that was a little bit of a personal struggle for me. And the support I got, not only from my leader, but the extended leadership team and my mentor. I think it's important to note that we're not afraid to have those difficult conversations about the emotional side of leading through a very challenging time. So if I had to say how Eaton supported me very recently, it would certainly be in that regard. But again, you give me any topic, any time period in the past 25 years, and I could come up with some example.
Right. And I have a question for you, Cindy. What is the culture like at Eaton, and how has it allowed you to grow your career? Obviously, we've heard a little bit about your growth and kind of, how long you've been there, but any insights and more details, that would be great.
Yeah, I think, the best way I can answer that question is, is a little bit of the story I have, why I've stayed. I'm 21 years with the company. I used to say I'm a unicorn in the world of retention, but I'm on this call with like women who have like 26 and 25 years with the company. So I'm not the unicorn in the room today, but a big part of why I've stayed is the people of the organization. I agree with Kerry. I think, the organization has generally saw the person first and, the employee second. We tend to, our CEO would describe us as a bit of a values-based company. So there's a really clear North Star for us. There's a clear vision. There's a clear set of aspirational goals. There's a clear set of attributes. And some of those we're building, by the way, like we're, evolving our digital mindset, like a lot of others. We're building on our ability to be more transparent and efficient. Some of those things that maybe are not total strengths for us as an organization, but we're constantly a work in progress. And I think generally as a culture, we want to do the right thing. We want to do the right thing for our customers. We want to do the right thing for the company. We want to do the right thing for our employees and our teams. And we want work at the end of the day to feel exciting, engaging, and meaningful. And we really do care about it. And so I think to me, the culture at Eaton is a lot about the people that are driving that culture, which it lends itself quickly to, navigating my career. There are so many people that, Kerry described a few of them in her world between her mentor and her boss. And, there are so many people on the daily for me that inspire me, motivate me, guide me. But as I've tracked up my career, they have been inspirational to me. I mean, my career would not be where it was today without one. I agree with Kerry's comments earlier of like, I had my own skin in the game. I was committed to my own career. I reached out. I didn't just sit in a corner and wait. But every time I reached out, there were these people who were so amazingly helpful to me. Some of them talking me off the ledge, some of them pushing me forward, some of them I even had someone tell me, you're in the wrong job. You got to get out. And I just, so to me, that's a lot of what creates that type of an environment is the culture. So the culture to me led to, the outcome of me every time I reached out, having folks that were really open to helping me navigate those moves. And some of them were tougher than others. Early in my career, I moved around for the first 10 years of my career. I made 6 moves in 10 years. I got tired. I was single. I kind of missed the boat on marrying young. I was totally lonely, sitting in the middle of nowhere, and I was going to leave the company. And because I was going to come back to Ohio, and I told someone, and that someone gave me advice, set me up with other people. Next thing I know, 6 months later, I'm in a new job. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio at the time, and continuing to evolve and grow my career. So, just one example out of the 21 years I've been here of kind of a key moment of choice that to me was enabled by the culture.
Great, thank you. And Becky, what are some of the benefits women can expect if they were to join Eaton?
Yeah, so that we have a variety of health and wellness benefits, and depending on what plans you choose, but I do like that we offer a lot more wellness. If you think about our mental health and gym reimbursements, things like that. But when I think about that, there's one of the benefits I've appreciated is there's a lot of professional development, career opportunities. Like Kerry, I used the tuition reimbursement program to get my MBA. But then even throughout my career, there's employee resource groups, there's special assignment marketplace, there's development programs, there's mentoring programs. I've been involved in industry programs, like industry associations that are associated with the electrical industry and have done programs like that. Then we have a corporate university with thousands of courses. And I was thinking the past 2 years, we've really rebuilt our leadership training. A lot of it we still have, but we started rebuilding it in terms of how we offered it to that just in time, just enough, just for me. We offered these learning sprints to provide targeted learning content over a period of 4 weeks. It allows leaders to learn, reflect, discuss, and share key learnings and go deeper when you want to. I just really appreciate the variety of opportunities to keep learning and growing. For me, that's one of my passions, is to continue to learn. And I really appreciate the variety of options available internally and externally.
Great, thanks for sharing that. And Jackie, a question for you. Why should people make the big shift and consider a career at Eaton?
So one of my favorite questions, being in the role that I'm in. So I'll break it down into a couple things. So kind of I think of it in terms of the what and the how, right? So I think what you're going to find when you look under the hood at Eaton is a very sound, very stable, financially strong, organization. Our core businesses are tied to 3 big secular, growth trends: sustainability, digitalization, energy transition. Eaton wins where it plays, really no matter where it plays, right? So I think if you look at everything that we do, we certainly are evolving in certain places, but at the end of the day, right, we aim to be the best. And that drive to win, I think propels the organization and, the people within it, on a really fun, exciting path. The company's mission, right? And when we think about what our organization, really strives to be, or what we strive to do, we want to improve the quality of life and the environment by, doing what we do really, really well. So that kind of gets into, I think, the how side of it. I think when you look at our employee base and you start to, pulse people inside of the company, you find that, as my colleagues have mentioned here, you can bring your whole self to work, who you are, sharing your ideas, being listened to, having an opportunity to learn, grow your career. We've got, 60 or 80,000 people across the globe, lots and lots, thousands of jobs open at any given time. Organizationally, we're really supportive of people taking the next, step in their career. So we encourage folks to join the company from outside. And then once you're here, we really want you to grow your career, right? We don't think about employees in terms of a short-term, investment. We think about our employee base in terms of a long-term investment. I think if that's the kind of organization that, excites you, that, you would want to join, I would encourage you to go out onto Eaton's career site, take a look at the jobs we have open, apply, reach out to people on LinkedIn that work for the company, get connected on Fairy Godboss, on Glassdoor, and get to know us, join our talent network. There's lots of ways that you can start to experience Eaton, as you evaluate what organization you want to join next.
Great. Thank you. So, I have a quick wrap-up question for all of you, because I know we're coming up to the last 10 minutes, and I definitely want to get to some Q&A too. So, the question I have to all of you, and Jackie, we'll start with you, is what advice would you give your younger self, or what has been your silver lining of the past year and a half?
Okay, good question. Maybe I'll answer the first. So I think if I had to give myself advice, 20 years ago, it would be to take more chances, be bold, and think about your career in terms of building kind of a body of work, and getting a number of different experiences. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to grow your career in a silo or in a particular function. But if you want to stay in a function, that's fine. But I would encourage myself to really think about getting a diversity of experience, to build that body of work, and to be able to be comfortable taking risks and taking more chances with my career.
Jackie, that reminds me of the quote, "Everything you ever wanted is on the other side of fear."
Yes, great quote, Becky. Love it.
So my advice is to compete with yourself. We spend so much time chasing others, whether it's their achievements, expectations, or dreams. And I used to think I had to be at a certain level or a certain position at a certain point because so-and-so was at that point by a certain age. And it took me a while to stop comparing myself to others and appreciate that I'm exactly where I need to be at this moment.
Yeah, I guess if I think about this one for me, I'm going to go back to what I talked about earlier. And having more confidence in myself would be the advice to give to my younger self, both my abilities and quite frankly, my intuition as well. You know, I am a big believer that your next role should be scary so that you are growing professionally. And, you know, we all know that women don't always apply for those roles until we think we're perfectly qualified. And we have to get beyond that. I certainly have been given the opportunity within Eaton to take some pretty big jumps and have been scared out of my mind the night before starting a new job. But somehow we just figure it out. And secondly, I would say just trust when something feels right, do it. And the opposite, if it doesn't feel right, talk to someone about taking action. But I definitely think that confidence thing for all of us is key to me.
Totally agree, Kerry. And I think about, you know, how much I worried my younger self. Oh my gosh, all the hours and, you know, time I spent worrying and fretting about, did I do this perfectly? And, you know, all of these things. And, you know, now all of a sudden in digital mindset, it's like make a mistake a minute. And I wish I would have made more of those because I've grown so much from the ones I've made, and I'm getting much more adept at that now of just, you know, pivot, learn, grow. I used to sweat the small stuff big time, and I wish I could get that time that I wasted back. And then to pivot off of that, you know, I think early in my career, I did not prioritize my career and my life. And, you know, I think that I met my husband later in career, you know, or later in life. And I have an amazing husband. I have an amazing, you know, the last 18 months, I've realized, I mean, my family and my friends are awesome. And I didn't always prioritize both. So I guess that's, you know, probably a big learning in the last 18 months and kind of reverberates to my early career self as well.
Wow. Thank you for all of for sharing all of that. That was some great advice to your younger selves. But I know we have a lot of questions actually here, so we'll get to some Q&As right now, if you don't mind. And let's start with, I'm kind of looking here. Okay, so I have, what are some considerations women with young kids, you know, 1 to 5 year olds should consider before making an external shift? What suggestions should we ask potential employers?
I was starting to type on that one, so I'll just start to answer it. And I see that Kerry was also responding. It goes back to our comment about assessing the culture and the manager. I what I call my sabbatical. I left Eaton at one point in my career, went into financial services, and part of it was I was trying to assess the culture for fit and other things like that. And the manager was very flexible in terms of the interview and everything that they were offering to me. The culture was not as flexible as the manager. And that made things a little bit more difficult because I was trying to adjust with my son's medical needs. And then I had a second child, everything else that kind of went on. So it's understanding the culture, but also understanding a manager creates that subculture and how flexible are they. And so doing what you can to understand that in the interview process. What happens if you get hired in that role and that manager takes a new job a month later? You want to understand, is it beyond that person in terms of that flexibility and to make that shift for yourself?
Yeah.
Great. And so here, what else do we have? Do you have advice for addressing issues with those 1% of bosses who don't want to help? You know, unfortunately, toxic bosses are real, and such conversations can cause more harm than good.
So I did take a crack at this one in the chat, and I'm sorry, in the Q&A session. So I'm not sure that is useful or not, but essentially, if anybody hasn't seen that, the two things that I was thinking of is we all know that there are leaders out there who they grew up in the organization and they had to move 20 times and work 12 hours a day. And they think everybody should follow suit. And if you're not willing to do that or do it their way, they don't want to make that flexibility for you. So my thought was maybe think about who that person trusts and where they get their coaching from, who their close peers are, and how can you solicit some help and input from those influencers of this one boss to have that conversation, or ask them to help and have that conversation. And then the other item I put in there was, could you break it into steps? A lot of times, if you suggest a drastic change, I'm going to go from 100% working in the office to 100% remote, it might be a little bit scary, but could it be a trial period? And could you set very well-defined metrics on how you measure progress, or how you measure that nothing has changed? And that might make the conversation a little more palatable in those early stages.
Great. And I see one here where Kerry made a great statement saying at Eaton, employees drive their own career path. So what would be your advice to someone that works for a company where the career path is very structured, meaning the current career path is, if you're on role X, you can only pivot into role Y?
I'd be happy to take this one. I think there's a lot of organizations out there that are super structured with their career pathing. And I think that for some people, that's really good. It works for their personality, right? They like to have that predictability. They know that this is what I'm going to do after I'm going to do this. But if that's not necessarily what you want to do, I think right now with the big shift that's going on, right, the mindset shift, not only for employees, but for organizations, I think going to your organization and letting them know that you have interest in another area, that's part of that transparency, that relationship with your manager. Organizations don't want to lose good people. Now, with that said, if the company structure is such where there is no flexibility, that may be one of those circumstances where, it might be time for you to think about what organizations out there allow you to continue to grow and develop your career, maybe not on that very narrow path, but allow you to diversify your experience. So again, I think it's about taking stock in what's important to you, how you think about growing your career, having those good discussions with your leaders, understanding the culture of the company that you're at, and thinking about the culture of the company that you want to be at.
Great. And I know we've definitely got a lot more questions than time, so I know we can definitely answer all of these offline to those that are asked, but let's see if there's one that we can. So I see one here. So any recommendations for an older woman candidate who has personally chosen to not cover her gray hair when beginning a job search? It's socially acceptable for men to embrace their gray, but not so much for women.
I can't answer that. I'm not embracing my gray.
But I will say more people are. I mean, so I think it's this term socially acceptable, or there's one path to, to careers. It is so, it's shifting so much on a daily of just completely diametrically different. I can't even, so I can't even think that would ever matter in a room I'd be in my building. I don't even think anyone would notice in my world. But, if you're in a more traditional world, I would say look around, because, what is it? It's like 3 women are actually embracing it, unlike Becky. And I think wear it stylishly would probably be my recommendation, but I would say rock it out, because I think the world is changing daily. And I think more and more companies, what is socially acceptable is more just being really good at your job. And some of this, I wore the right hair, I wore the right makeup. Some of the stuff we grew up with, frankly, is no longer the case, and it's shifting on a daily basis.
Well, thank you again. I know we've come to time. This was phenomenal. Really appreciated all of the feedback, advice, and information you all shared. I hope the audience felt the same way. Thank you to everyone joining us today, and we will send over the recording to everyone that attended. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.